Good morning, and welcome back, readers. Or if you're joining us, welcome. This morning is Chapter 4 at Flourish and Blotts from Book 2. Life at the Burrow was as different as possible from life on Privet Drive. The Dursleys liked everything neat and ordered. The Weasleys' house burst with the strange and unexpected. Harry got a shock the first time he looked in the mirror over the kitchen mantelpiece, and it shouted, "Tuck your shirt in, Scruffy." The ghoul in the attic howled and dropped pipes whenever he felt things were getting too quiet, and small explosions from Fred and George's bedroom were considered perfectly normal. What Harry found most unusual about life at Ron's, however, wasn't the talking mirror or the clanking ghoul. It was the fact that everybody there seemed to like him. Mrs. Weasley fussed over the state of his socks and tried to force him to eat fourth helpings at every meal. Mr. Weasley liked Harry to sit next to him at the dinner table so he could bombard him with questions about life with the Muggles, asking him to explain how things like plugs and the postal service worked. "Fascinating," he would say as Harry talked him through using a telephone. "Ingenious, really, how many ways Muggles have found of getting along without magic." Harry heard from Hogwarts one sunny morning about a week after he had arrived at the Burrow. He and Ron went down to breakfast to find Mr. and Mrs. Weasley and Ginny already sitting at the kitchen table. The moment she saw Harry, Ginny accidentally knocked her porridge bowl to the floor with a loud clatter. Poor girl. Ginny seemed very prone. Ginny seemed very prone to knocking things over whenever Harry entered a room. She dived under the table to retrieve the bowl and emerged with her face glowing like the setting sun. Pretending he hadn't noticed this, Harry sat down and took the toast Mrs. Weasley offered him. "Letters from school," said Mr. Weasley, passing Harry and Ron identical envelopes of yellowish parchment, addressed in green ink. "Dumbledore already knows you're here, Harry. Doesn't miss a trick, that man. You two have got him too," he added as Fred and George ambled in, still in their pajamas. "Well, that's interesting. So the Ministry of Magic is tracking Harry well enough to know that any magic that happens near that house, and Dumbledore's tracking Harry's movements because I'm not sure anybody notified him. What would it feel like to live in a situation that bad and knew that the government and Dumbledore were aware or had the ability to be aware if they wanted to? That can't feel very nice at all." For a few minutes, there was a silence as they all read their letters. Harry told him to catch the Hogwarts Express as usual from King's Cross Station on September 1st. There was also a list of the new books he'd need for the coming year. Second-year students will require The Standard Book of Spells, Grade 2, by Miranda Goshawk. Break with a Banshee, by Gilderoy Lockhart. Gadding with Ghouls, by Gilderoy Lockhart. Holidays with Hags, Gilderoy Lockhart. Travels with Trolls, by Gilderoy Lockhart. Voyages with Vampires, by Gilderoy Lockhart. Wanderings with Werewolves, by Gilderoy Lockhart. Year with the Yeti, by Gilderoy Lockhart. I'm going to have to say that sounds like some of my past relationships. I'm just being honest here. Fred, who had finished his own list, peered over at Harry's. "You've been told to get all Lockhart's books too?" he said. "The new Defense Against Dark Arts teacher must be a fan. Bet it's a witch." At this point, Fred caught his mother's eye and quickly busied himself with the marmalade. "That lot won't come cheap," said George, with a quick look at his parents. "Lockhart's books are really expensive." "Well, we'll manage," said Mrs. Weasley, but she looked worried. "I expect we'll be able to pick up a lot of Jenny's things secondhand." "Oh, are you starting at Hogwarts this year?" Harry asked Jenny. She nodded, blushing to the roots of her flaming hair, and put her elbow in the butter dish. Fortunately, no one saw this except Harry, because just then Ron's elder brother Percy walked in. He was already dressed, his Hogwarts prefect badge pinned to his sweater vest. "Morning, all," said Percy briskly. "Lovely day." He sat down in the only remaining chair, but leapt up again almost immediately, pulling from underneath him a molten gray feather duster. At least that was what Harry thought it was, until he saw that it was breathing. Errol, said Ron, taking the limp owl from Percy and extracting a letter from under its wing. Finally, he's got Hermione's answer. I wrote to her saying we were going to try and rescue you from the Dursleys. He carried Errol to a perch just inside the back door and tried to stand him on it. But Errol flopped straight off again, so Ron laid him on the training board instead, muttering, pathetic. Then he ripped open Hermione's letter and read it out loud. Dear Ron and Harry, if you're there, I hope everything went all right and that Harry is okay, and then you didn't do anything illegal to get him out. Ron, because that would get Harry into trouble too. I've been really worried, and if Harry is all right, will you please let me know at once? But perhaps it would be better if you used a different owl, because I think another delivery might finish your one off. I'm very busy with schoolwork, of course. How can she be? Said Ron in horror. We're on vacation. And we're going to London next Wednesday to buy my new books. Why don't we meet in Diagon Alley? Let me know what's happening as soon as you can. Love, from Hermione. Well, that fits in nicely. We can go and get all your things then, too, said Mrs. Weasley, starting to clear the table. What are you all up to today? Harry, Ron, Fred, and George were planning to go up the hill to a small paddock the Weasleys owned. It was surrounded by trees that blocked it from view of the village below, meaning that they could practice Quidditch here as long as they didn't fly too high. They couldn't use real Quidditch balls, which would have been hard to explain if they had escaped and flown away over the village. Instead, they threw apples for one another to catch. They took turns riding Harry's Nimbus 2000, which was easily the best broom. Ron's old shooting star was often outstripped by passing butterflies. That's a funny image. Wish that had been in the movies. 5 minutes later, they were marching up the hill, broomsticks over their shoulders. They had asked Percy if he wanted to join them, but he had said he was busy. Harry had only seen Percy at mealtime so far. He stayed shut in his room the rest of the time. Interesting. Wish I knew what he was up to, said Fred, frowning. He's not himself. His exam results came the day before you did. 12 owls, and he hardly gloated at all. Ordinary wizarding levels, George explained, seeing Harry's puzzled look. Bill got 12 too. If we're not careful, we'll have another head boy in the family. I don't think I could stand the shame. Bill was the oldest Weasley brother. He and the next brother, Charlie, had already left Hogwarts. Harry had never met either of them, but knew that Charlie was in Romania studying dragons, and Bill in Egypt working for the Wizards' Bank, Gringotts. Don't know how Mom and Dad are going to afford all our school stuff this year, said George after a while. 5 sets of Lockhart books, and Ginny needs a robe and a wand and everything. Harry said nothing. He felt a bit awkward. Stored in an underground vault at Gringotts in London was a small fortune his parents had left him. Of course, it was only in the wizarding world that he had money. You couldn't use galleons, sickles, and knutes in muggle shops. I couldn't figure out how to pronounce it. He had never mentioned his Gringotts bank account to the Dursleys. He didn't think their horror of anything connected with magic would stretch to a large pile of gold. Mrs. Weasley took them all early the following Wednesday. After a quick half a dozen bacon sandwiches each, they pulled on their coats, and Mrs. Weasley took a flower pot off the kitchen mantelpiece and peered inside. We're running low, Arthur, she sighed. We'll have to buy some more today. Guest first. After you, Harry, dear. And she offered him the flower pot. Harry stared at them all watching him. Well, what am I supposed to do? He stammered. He's never traveled by flute powder, said Ron suddenly. Sorry, Harry, I forgot. Never? Said Mr. Weasley. But how did you get to Diagon Alley to buy your school things last year? I went on the underground. Really? Said Mr. Weasley eagerly. Excuse me. Were there escapitors? How exactly? Not now, Arthur, said Mrs. Weasley. Flue powder's a lot quicker, dear, but goodness me, if you've never used it before. You'll be all right, Mum, said Fred. Harry, watch us first. He took a pinch of glittering powder out of the flower pot, stepped up to the fire, threw the powder into the flames. With a roar, the fire turned emerald green and rose higher than Fred, who stepped right into it, shouted, Diagon Alley, and vanished. You must speak clearly, dear, Mrs. Weasley told Harry as George dipped his hand into the flower pot, and be sure to get out at the right grate. The right what? Said Harry nervously as the fire roared and whipped George out of sight too. Well, there are an awful lot of wizard fires to choose from, you know, but as long as you've spoken clearly, you'll be fine, Molly. Don't fuss, said Mr. Weasley, helping himself to flue powder too. But, dear, if he got lost, how would we ever explain to his aunt and uncle? They wouldn't mind, Harry reassured her, and he believes that. Dudley would think it was a brilliant joke if I got lost up a chimney. Don't worry about that. Well, all right. You go after Arthur, said Mrs. Weasley. Now, when you get into the fire, say where you're going and keep your elbows tucked in, Ron advised. And your eyes shut, said Mrs. Weasley. The suit. Don't fidget, said Ron, or you might well fall out of the wrong fireplace. But don't panic and get out too early. Wait until you see Fred and George. Trying hard to bear all of this in mind. And we'll pause here for a second, because this being rushed into something with dangers, uninformed and unprepared, which is exactly what we did on the edge of the Forbidden Forest in book 1. This is not a good place to be where you're feeling pressured to do a thing. These people are already acting as an adopted family. They're doing it. It's normalized, but he's got fears and concerns, and it could use an actual, could use some more time than like, we're doing this. Come on, this is how. Could use an actual conversation. And then it wouldn't have to be so stressful. Where were we? Trying hard to bear all this in mind, Harry took a pinch of flue powder and walked to the edge of the fire. He took a deep breath, scattered the powder into the flames, and stepped forward. The fire felt like a warm breeze. He opened his mouth and immediately swallowed a lot of hot ash. Diagonally, he coughed. It felt as though he were being sucked down a giant drain. He seemed to be spinning very fast. The roaring in his ears was deafening. He tried to keep his eyes open, but the swirl of green flames made him feel sick. Something hard knocked his elbow, and he tucked it in tightly, still spinning and spinning. Now it felt as though cold hands were slapping his face. Squinting through his glasses, he saw a blurred stream of fireplaces and snatched glimpses of the rooms beyond. His bacon sandwiches were churning inside him. He closed his eyes again, wishing it would stop, and then he fell face forward onto cold stone and felt the bridge of his glasses snap. That's all horrifying. That's a freaking nightmare. I'd rather ride a Greyhound bus. No, that's horrid. Why would anybody do that to themselves on a regular basis? Gosh. Dizzy and bruised, covered in soot, he got gingerly to his feet, holding his broken glasses up to his eyes. He was quite alone, but where he was, he had no idea. All he could tell was that he was standing in the stone fireplace of what looked like a large, dimly lit wizard's shop. But nothing in here was ever likely to be on a Hogwarts school list. A glass case nearby held a withered hand on a cushion, a blood-stained pack of cards, and a staring glass eye. Evil-looking masks stared down from the walls. An assortment of human bones lay upon the counter, and rusty, spiked instruments hung from the ceiling. Even worse, the dark, narrow street Harry could see through the dusty shop window was definitely not Diagon Alley. The sooner he got out of here, the better. Nose still stinging where it had hit the hearth, That's a bit of a tongue twister. Where it had hit the hearth, Harry made his way swiftly and silently toward the door. But before he got halfway toward it, two people appeared on the other side of the glass, and one of them was the very last person Harry wanted to meet when he was lost, covered in soot and wearing broken glasses. Draco Malfoy. Thus, we initiate the conflict arc for Book 2. Harry looked quickly around and spotted a large black cabinet to his left. He shot inside it and pulled the doors closed, leaving a small crack to peer through. Seconds later, a bell clanged and Malfoy stepped into the shop. The man who followed could only be Draco's father. He had the same pale, pointed face and identical, cold, gray eyes. Mr. Malfoy crossed the shop, looking lazily at the items on display, and rang a bell on the counter before turning to his son and saying, "Touch nothing, Draco." Malfoy, who had reached for the glass eye, said, "I thought you were going to buy me a present." "I said I would buy you a racing broom," said his father, drumming his fingers on the counter. "What's the good of that if I'm not on the house team?" said Malfoy, looking sulky and bad-tempered. "Harry Potter got a Nimbus 2000 last year. Special permission from Dumbledore so he could play for Gryffindor. He's not even that good. It's just because he's famous. Famous for having a stupid scar on his forehead." Malfoy bent down to examine a shelf full of skulls. "Everyone thinks he's so smart, wonderful Potter with his scar and his broomstick. Listen to his jealousy and listen to what he's jealous of. You have told me this at least a dozen times already," said Mr. Malfoy with a quelling look at his son, "and I would remind you that it is not prudent to appear less than fond of Harry Potter. Not when most of our kind regard him as the hero who made the Dark Lord disappear. Ah, Mr. Borgin." A stooping man had appeared behind the counter, smoothing his greasy hair back from his face. "Mr. Malfoy, what a pleasure to see you again," said Mr. Borgin, in a voice as oily as his hair. "Delighted. And young Master Malfoy, too. Charmed. How may I be of assistance? I must show you, just in for today, and very reasonably priced." "I'm not buying today, Mr. Borgin, but selling," said Mr. Malfoy. Coffee break. Thank you. Selling. The smile faded slightly from Mr. Borgin's face. "You have heard, of course, that the Ministry is conducting more raids," said Mr. Malfoy, taking a roll of parchment from his inside pocket and unraveling it for Mr. Borgin to read. "I have a few, items at home that might embarrass me if the Ministry were to call." Mr. Borgin fixed a pair of pince-nez to his nose and looked down the list. "The Ministry wouldn't presume to trouble you, sir, surely?" Mr. Malfoy's lip curled. "I have not been visited yet. The name Malfoy still commands a certain respect, yet the Ministry grows ever more meddlesome. There are rumors about a new Muggle Protection Act. No doubt that flea-bitten, Muggle-loving fool Arthur Weasley is behind it." Harry felt a hot surge of anger, because Harry is already developing loyalty to his found family. "And as you see, certain of these poisons might make it appear—" "I understand, sir, of course," said Mr. Borgin. "Let me see." "Can I have that?" interrupted Draco, pointing at the withered hand on its cushion. "Ah, the Hand of Glory," said Mr. Borgin, abandoning Mr. Malfoy's list and scurrying over to Draco. "Insert a candle, and it gives light only to the holder. Best friend of thieves and plunderers. Your son has fine taste, sir." "I hope my son will amount to more than a thief or a plunderer, Borgin." "I hope everybody wants that for their kids," said Mr. Malfoy coldly. And Mr. Borgin said quickly, "No offense, sir. No offense meant." "Though if his grades don't pick up," said Mr. Malfoy, more coldly still, "that may indeed be all he is fit for." Ow. Imagine how that feels on Draco's self-esteem. Wonder if Draco has any self-esteem. It's not my fault, retorted Draco. The teachers all have favorites. That Hermione Granger. We can hate the character of Draco Malfoy and admit that they do play favorites. That's a legitimate complaint. I would have thought you'd be ashamed that a girl of no wizard family beat you in every exam, snapped Mr. Malfoy. Ha, said Harry under his breath, pleased to see Draco looking both abashed and angry. It's the same all over, said Mr. Borgin in his oily voice. Wizard blood is counting for less everywhere. Not with me, said Mr. Malfoy, his long nostrils flaring. No, sir, nor with me, sir, said Mr. Borgin with a deep bow. Well, there was definitely some subtext in there. They started to haggle. Harry watched nervously as Draco drew nearer and nearer to his hiding place, examining the objects for sale. Draco paused to examine a long coil of hangman's rope and to read, smirking, the card propped on a magnificent necklace of opals. Excuse me. Caution, do not touch. Cursed. Has claimed the lives of 19 Muggle owners to date. Draco turned away and saw the cabinet right in front of him. He walked forward. He stretched out his hand for the handle. Done, said Mr. Malfoy at the counter. Come, Draco. Harry wiped his forehead on his sleeve as Draco turned away. Good day to you, Mr. Borgin. I'll expect you at the manor tomorrow to pick up the goods. The moment the door had closed, Mr. Borgin dropped his oily manner. Good day yourself, Mr. Malfoy, and if the stories are true, you haven't sold me half of what's hidden in your manor. I'm going to pause for just a second. Harry is in a wardrobe. Presumably, it's not particularly hot in there. He wiped his forehead on his sleeve because he was sweating that bad. How scared do you have to be? How scared is he in this moment? Okay. That leaves an effect. There we go. Muttering darkly, Mr. Borgin disappeared into a back room. Harry waited for a moment in case he came back, then, quietly as he could, slipped out of the cabinet, past the glass cases, and out of the shop door. Clutching his broken glasses to his face, Harry stared around. He had emerged in a dingy alleyway that seemed to be made up entirely of shops devoted to the dark arts. The one he'd just left, Borgin and Burke's, looked like the largest, but opposite was a nasty window display of shrunken heads, and two doors down, a large cage was alive with gigantic black spiders. Two shabby-looking wizards were watching him from the shadow of a doorway, muttering to each other. Feeling jumpy, Harry set off, trying to hold his glasses on straight, and hoping against hope he'd be able to find a way out of here. An old wooden street sign hanging over a shop selling poisonous candles told him he was in Nocturne Alley. This didn't help, as Harry had never heard of such a place. He supposed he hadn't spoken clearly enough through his mouth of ashes back in the Weasley's fire. Trying to stay calm, he wondered what to do. Not lost, are you, my dear? Said a voice in his ear, making him jump. An aged witch stood in front of him, holding a tray of what looked horribly like whole human fingernails. She leered at him, showing mossy teeth. Harry backed away. I'm fine, thanks, he said. I'm just... Harry, what do you think you're doing down there? Harry's heart leapt. So did the witch. A load of fingernails cascaded down over her feet, and she cursed as the massive form of Hagrid. The Hogwarts gamekeeper came striding toward them, beetle-black eyes flashing over his great bristling beard. Interesting. Hagrid is the keeper of the keys. He was titled thus in Book 1. He shows up in the same chapter in Book 2. Doom, doom, doom. Hagrid, Harry croaked in belief. I was lost. Blue powder. Hagrid seized Harry by the scruff of his neck and pulled him away from the witch, knocking the tray right out of her hands. Her shrieks followed them all the way along the twisting alleyway, out into bright sunlight. Harry saw a familiar snow-white marble building in the distance. Gringotts Bank. Hagrid had steered him right to Diagon Alley. "You're a mess," said Hagrid gruffly, brushing soot off Harry so forcefully he nearly knocked him into a barrel of dragon dung outside an apothecary. "Skulking around Nocturne Alley. I don't know. Dodgy place, Harry. Don't want no one to see you down there." "I realized that," said Harry, ducking as Hagrid made to brush him off again. "I told you, I was lost. What were you doing down there anyway?" "I was looking for a flesh-eating slug repellent," growled Hagrid. "They're ruining the school cabbages." "You're not on your own." "I'm staying with the Weasleys, but we got separated," Harry explained. "I've got to go find them." They set off together down the street. "How come you never wrote back to me?" said Hagrid as Harry jogged alongside him. He had to take 3 steps to every stride of Hagrid's enormous boots. Harry explained all about Dobby and the Dursleys. "Lousy muggles," growled Hagrid. "If I'd have known—" Harry, over here." Harry looked up and saw Hermione Granger standing at the top of the white flight of steps to Gringotts. She ran down to meet them, her bushy brown hair flying behind her. "What happened to your glasses?" "Hello, Hagrid." "Oh, it's wonderful to see you two again. Are you coming into Gringotts, Harry?" "As soon as I've found the Weasleys," said Harry. Yeah, won't have long to wait," Hagrid said with a grin. Harry and Hermione looked around. Sprinting up the crowded streets were Ron, Fred, George, Percy, and Mr. Weasley. "Harry," Mr. Weasley panted, "we hoped you'd only gone one grade too far." He mopped his glistening bald patch. "Molly's frantic. She's coming now." All right, so this is actually a good thing. In karma terms, the Weasley family has paid a cost, and their stress and anxiety when they realized that Harry was missing and their frantic search for him, they have paid a cost for having underprepared him. They're also, in this moment, showing Harry that they actually cared. This is an important moment. Where did you come out?" Ron asked. "Nocturne Alley," said Hagrid grimly. "Excellent," said Fred and George together. "We've never been allowed in," said Ron enviously. "I should ruddy well think not," growled Hagrid. Mrs. Weasley now came galloping into view, her handbag swinging wildly in one hand, Jenny just clinging on to the other. "Oh, Harry, oh, my dear, you could have been anywhere." Gasping for breath, she pulled a large clothes brush out of her bag and began sweeping off the suit Hagrid hadn't managed to beat away. Mr. Weasley took Harry's glasses, gave them a tap of his wand, and returned them good as new. "Well, gotta be off," said Hagrid, who was having his hand wrung by the Weasleys. "Nocturne Alley, if you haven't found him. Hagrid, see you at Hogwarts." And he strode away, head and shoulders taller than anyone else in the packed street. "Guess who I saw in Borgin and Burke's?" Harry asked Ron and Hermione as they climbed the Gringotts steps. "Malfoy and his father." "Did Lucius Malfoy buy anything?" said Mr. Weasley sharply behind them. "No, he was selling." "So he's worried," said Mr. Weasley with grim satisfaction. "Oh, I'd love to get Lucius Malfoy for something." "You be careful, Arthur," said Mrs. Weasley sharply as they were bowed into the bank by a goblin at the door. "That family's trouble. Don't go biting off more than you can chew." "So you don't think I'm a match for Lucius Malfoy?" said Mr. Weasley indignantly, but he was distracted almost at once by the sight of Hermione's parents, who were standing nervously at the counter that ran all along the great marble hall, waiting for Hermione to introduce them. "But you're muggles," said Mr. Weasley delightedly. "We must have a drink. What's that you've got there? Oh, you're changing muggle money. Molly, look." He pointed excitedly at the 10-pound notes in Mr. Granger's hand. "Meet you back here," Ron said to Hermione as the Weasleys and Harrys were led off to their underground vaults by another Gringotts goblin. Their vaults were reached by means of small goblin-driven carts that sped along the miniature train tracks through the bank's underground tunnels. Harry enjoyed the breakneck journey down to the Weasleys' vault, but felt dreadful, far worse than he had in Nocturne Alley, when it was opened. There was a very small pile of silver sickles inside, and just one gold galleon. Mrs. Weasley felt right into the corners before sweeping the whole lot into her bag. Harry felt even worse when they reached his vault. He tried to block the contents from view as he hastily shoved handfuls of coins into a leather bag. He probably would have enjoyed not having that conflict out there. He has a pile of gold and his found family is poor. He probably would have liked to have not have had to deal with that at this stage. Back outside on the marble steps, they all separated. Percy muttering vaguely about needing a new quill. Fred and George had spotted their friend from Hogwarts, Lee Jordan. Mrs. Weasley and Jenny were going to a second-hand robe shop. Mr. Weasley was insisting on taking the Grangers off to the Leaky Cauldron for a drink. We'll all meet at Flourish and Blotts in an hour to buy your school books, said Mrs. Weasley, setting off with Jenny. And not one step down Nocturne Alley, she shouted at the twins' retreating backs. Harry, Ron, and Hermione strolled off along the winding, cobbled street, the bag of gold, silver, and bronze jangling cheerfully. In Harry's pocket was clamoring to be spent, so he bought 3 large strawberry and peanut butter ice creams, which they slurped happily as they wandered up the alley, examining the fascinating shop windows. Ron gazed longingly at a full set of Chudley cannon robes in the windows of Quality Quidditch supplies until Hermione dragged them off to buy ink and parchment next door. In Gamble and Jape's Wizarding Joke Shop, they met Fred, George, and Lee Jordan, who were stocking up on Dr. Filibuster's fabulous Wet Start, No Heat fireworks, and in a tiny junk shop full of broken wands, lopsided brass scales, and old cloaks covered in potion stains, they found Percy, deeply immersed in a small and deeply boring book called Prefects Who Gained Power. A study of Hogwarts prefects and their later careers. Ron read aloud off the back cover. That sounds fascinating. Go away, Percy snapped. Of course, he's very ambitious, Percy. He's got it all planned out. He wants to be Minister of Magic, Ron told Harry and Hermione in an undertone as they left Percy to it. All right, folks, I don't think I'm going to be able to finish this chapter for you guys this morning, and we're going to put a pin in it right here, and we will continue later. I hope you all have a lovely day, and I will eventually edit a no-split version. But thanks for being with me today, and I will see you again soon.